cars as vectors of productivity, expressions of pleasure, and items of pride. However, they are also deadly. When we engage with cars, we know the risks and act knowing our lives are on the line. Computers should be the same. We use them for work and for leisure, but many people don't give them the respect they deserve. They send many lives into a spiral of immediate gratification and time mismanagement. Our desire for immediate gratification and our instinct to seek information is exploited by technology, and this relation is leveraged by companies. This combination of factors requires us to be mindful of computers.
By surrounding ourselves with the internet and social media, many users have become extremely reliant on likes online to remain happy with themselves. This degree of immediate gratification simply can't be fulfilled in the real world, which is why so many people are drawn into these types of platforms in the first place. Once accustomed to the constant stream of compliments online, these users become less likely to go out of their comfort zones, are easily discouraged in their endeavors, and have difficulty dealing with negative feelings in general. Real life can feel a lot scarier and barren of support in comparison. A Harvard University article explains that social media is providing a very easy way to gain dopamine through positive social interactions online. Now, instead of paying someone a genuine compliment in real life, people can get away with simply liking a social media post and gain the same amount of satisfaction and dopamine released in their brains. On top of social media, the prevalence of online shopping enables this mentality as well. With platforms like Amazon available to customers, it takes little to no effort to find and order anything you want, and the package appears right in front of your doorstep, no matter the size. We can see how the internet enables people's appetite for instant gratification, so it's important to stay mindful when exploring the web and remain capable of facing the challenges of the real world.
Just the presence of an abundance of information alone is addictive. Thomas Hill has researched the connection between animals foraging for food and people foraging for information. His findings have led him to declare his evidence strongly supports the evolutions of mechanisms, initially in control of spatial foraging, but through increasing cortical connections, eventually used to forage for information. In essence, his findings tell us that our desire for information has evolved from the same instinctual impulse that makes us seek out and consume food. This phenomenon has been found in multiple studies. Ming Su and Kenji Kobayashi have also studied the effect of information on our brains and found a direct link between dopamine and information. Their conclusion was that information-seeking behavior shares the same common neural code as money or food. They went on to directly say that, to the brain, information is its own reward, above and beyond whether it's useful. But how can we look at the impact of technology on our instinctual drive for information? Gasly and Rosen, authors of The Distracted Mind, put forth the idea of using a graphical model for animals foraging for food and applying it to informational gathering, as the two acts are highly related.
Animals seek out sources of food and will stay at a source until the resources gained at that source become diminished. Part of their decision to move to a new source is impacted by the time it takes to go to a new source. Here's the graphical model for food foraging, with the resources gained on the y-axis and the time spent at a food source on the x-axis. This curve represents the relation between the animal's perception of resources gained versus time. The point they go to a new food source is right here. But what determines this point of going to a new source? This is the full graph. The time on the left-hand side just represents the time it takes to go to a new source. Take that transit time and draw the tangent to the resource intake curve, and at the point of tangency is the time in which an animal will go to a new food source. Now when we look at the graph through the lens of information foraging, this point of switching to a new food source becomes switching to a new tab in a web browser, or checking our phone when we become bored, when we feel the urge to do something else. Now that we have phones in our pockets and fast internet, the time it takes to switch to a new source of information has decreased, which changes the tangent, making us want to switch to new information more rapidly. As we get used to switching to new information sources faster, this creates a negative feedback loop of getting more bored with the content we consume, and spending increasing amounts of time on technology also tends to stress us out. Both of these, boredom and anxiety, combine to lower our perception of the value of information, making us hunger for more and shifting the resource intake curve down, leading to even shorter times before we want a new information source.
As you can see, the presence of technology has shifted our perception of information and has led us to become less engaged with media and crave new sources of information faster.
So, clearly there are many concerns regarding technology and how our brains use it to consume media. However, what makes these concerns even more daunting is that tech companies are intentionally exploiting them for profit every day. Social media companies, for example, often make the majority of their profits off of advertisements, so user attention on these platforms is essentially currency. Companies like Instagram take advantage of our desire for immediate gratification by designing apps with certain bells and whistles to release dopamine in users' brains and keep them engaged. In fact, many ex-employees of Facebook have warned that big tech companies deliberately design apps to be harmfully addictive, like a drug. One Facebook insider even went so far as to say that they are exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology, and that he, along with people as high up as Mark Zuckerberg himself, understood this consciously, and they did it anyways. And it's not just social media companies like Facebook and Instagram preying off human vulnerabilities. Similarly, companies like YouTube deliberately feed off of our instinct to seek information, and they do it to an unhealthy extent. In fact, an MIT article states that about 70% of the content consumed on YouTube is through their recommendations section. In other words, the majority of content consumed isn't even something the user searched for, but rather something that YouTube has fed users to force them deeper down a rabbit hole of useless information and make more money for themselves. YouTube is aware of this unhealthy use of their platform as well, as they are constantly tweaking a machine learning algorithm in order to create a content feedback loop, as they call it, ultimately keeping users trapped in a cycle of information.
By partaking in more information and media, we become more informed, right? Why should we change how we intake information? We'd like to think that reading means we're learning more, but that's not always true. The famous saying, "You should not believe everything you read on the internet," is always construed in the speaker's favor. However, people should also be aware of the sites that they trust to give them valid information. Just because they have written articles you agree with doesn't mean that they are correct or that you should believe them. This is not only a problem as they can lie, but also because they influence how you think. Most people get their information by going to their favorite websites or following like-minded people on social media networks. However, this influx of information becomes a filter bubble which only gives the information to the user that they want to hear. This specificity of data can create very biased viewpoints, shaped by those who control your media. Although one can perceive this media to be valuable, in practice this information can be trivial to someone's day-to-day life, much like how someone would perceive sugary foods to be more valuable than healthy foods. If you become too addicted to these ideas, it can start to affect you in the same way sugary foods can affect you. Nicholas Carr, a writer who focuses on the effects of technology on people, has said that we become neurologically what we think. And you see this girl right here? She's clearly watched too many cute cat videos. We limit the information we see to our own tastes and ignore the information that disagrees, instead of trying to learn as much of the truth as possible. This makes our worldview narrow, which is information addiction that people need to be mindful of.
Though it may seem pointless to try to resist advancing technology coupled with scheming companies preying on our vulnerabilities, there are many techniques we can use every day to keep ourselves on track. For example, we can use time management techniques like the Pomodoro method to manage the dangers of computers, just like we used seatbelts to manage the dangers of cars.
By timing how long we are on the internet for, we can ensure that we do not fall into a loop of constantly searching for new information and develop the ability to purposefully set aside time for other activities and hobbies that are much healthier for us in the long run. Moreover, via these time management techniques, we can treat internet time as a reward, one that shouldn't be abused, but is certainly nice to have for a short period of time. By acknowledging the dangers of technology and preparing accordingly, we can limit the negative effects that technology can have on our minds.